Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. Bill is the publisher and editor of the Dorchester Reporter, a publication that keeps our community connected and informed with everything that happens in Dorchester. Bill, all of us at the Boys and Girls Club are excited to speak with you today, but first we want to know, is there anything that we can do for you during these difficult times?
Well, Queenie, it's great to see you. How are you?
Well, I'm well, thank you.
I like your jacket, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah, did you guys notice I had to represent.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have this with me all the time anyway, so I figured I might as well put it on for this one. But it's so good to see all your faces, and thanks for joining the call. Thanks for having me. What can you do to help me? Well, you're doing it right now, staying in communication and staying in touch with each other and staying in touch with the club. And, you know, that's what we have to do right now for each other. So it's not just for me, but for everybody, for the organization that you guys love too, just as I do. We need to be connected, stay connected, support the club, support other organizations in the neighborhood, because we have to come out of the other side of this crisis as whole as we were when we entered it. It's going to be tricky because a lot of businesses, especially local businesses, which are closed now, it's going to be tough, right? Economically, it's obviously very stressful for our families, for our elders, for our frontline healthcare workers. But all of us are in this together, and to one degree or another are going through this. There's varying degrees of stress and anxiety and danger, but we're all, you know, affected. And this is why this story that we're covering as a news organization is really unlike anything that we've covered before, because it's just, first of all, it's like a nonstop news cycle, right? And it's just one thing after another, and there's no real end date that's surefire, right? It's a long duration event that is unlike anything that we've covered in our history. So all of those things said, what can we do? We have to be here for each other. You know, what the club has done for the Reporter has been extraordinary. What it's done for the community has been even more extraordinary in the services that the club has been able to maintain, not only virtually like this with the Zoom calls and the programming, but direct services to the neighborhood, things like the grab and go bags on Fridays, other services that the club is able to somehow still mount and get out the door with its resources. It's really special. And the Boys and Girls Clubs of Dorchester and the Reporter go back to our very beginnings together. And I used to work at the club when I was at BC High, when I was in high school. I learned to swim at the club. Like a lot of you guys, you know, I probably spent some early days there and then some of my teenage days there. And the first story I ever wrote for the Reporter was about Bruce Seals at the club back in 1990. So that's how long I've been associated with the club. And over the last few weeks, the club, Boys and Girls Clubs of Dorchester, has been in the Reporter. This is a full-page ad that the club did. This was back on April 2nd when we were just kind of getting into the thick of this problem. And then this week, this is today's paper that just hit the streets, and it's still circulating, and it'll be in people's homes tomorrow mainly. But the club has another big ad today telling Dorchester people all about the things that are still happening and how to plug into resources, and also how to donate to the club, which also needs help, right? We all kind of need to be supporting one another. So this is a good first step, and I'm excited to talk to you guys and hear about what's going on with you guys too.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Bill. We have some members here today who are excited to talk to you, and they have some questions for you. So we're going to start with Patrick, who is a junior at BCLA.
Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Bill. So my question is, do you feel like the Dorchester Reporter has a positive influence on the community?
I mean, I think on our better days we do. You know, we strive to be representative of the community, and you know, you guys live here, and you you go to school here, some of you, and we're all from here one way or another, right? So we know that there's good, bad, ugly, magnificent. We got the whole gamut here in Dorchester. So we don't try to pretend like there's not difficulties and challenges in our neighborhood. We know there are. We write about those too. And certainly we're experiencing a lot of that right now. But we also do feel like we have to paint the whole picture and tell positive stories and focus on good people who live here, businesses, organizations that are doing good things. So we try to be reflective of the community we cover. That's been kind of the mission all along since 1983 when my parents started the paper. I was working for them when I was 10 because I lived in the house where the paper got started. And I can say all along we've had a mix of all those things, good, bad. There's sometimes very sad stories that we have to tell. I think we try to represent the neighborhood as best we can, and we also try to amplify voices who are from our community. The whole idea of having a community newspaper and news organization is to give voice to people who actually live and work here and may not always get their voices heard as much in other media sources. So that's our goal, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Isaiah, who is also a junior at Tech Boston, has a question for you this evening, Bill.
Hey, Bill. So my question is, how has your job changed during COVID-19?
Just like you guys, right? Everything's changed for now. I'm still here at the office, and I'm one of the few people who work on at the Reporter who come in every day. Most of my colleagues here are working from home. The other thing that's changed is the way we take the paper around. You guys probably see the paper at the club when you're there. A lot of people pick up the Reporter at the store every week on every Wednesday or Thursday. So now what we're doing instead is, because a lot of people aren't going to stores or some of the stores have closed. So we've been taking the paper every week and bringing it to apartment buildings, senior housing in particular, where a lot of our readers who used to go out to the grocery store or the corner store to get their groceries and would buy the paper, they're not doing that because they just obviously they want to be safe and stay at home. So we're trying to bring the Reporter to them. We've seen a lot of people in the last several weeks actually ordering subscriptions so they can have the paper delivered through the mail. We've always offered that service, but now increasingly people want it to come to them that way. And then obviously a lot more people are reading us online, which we've been online since 1995, but we've seen a huge spike in traffic during these last few weeks because we're doing important journalism, but also because it's a better delivery system for a lot of people. My job has changed in that I'm a lot lonelier here in the office, and I don't love that. It's nice to usually have other reporters here and other staff to bounce ideas off of. And so we're doing it this way, the way we're doing this right now. We're communicating on Zoom, and we're talking a lot more on the phone and texting each other. But we're still getting the job done, and I'm proud of the team at the Reporter because everybody stepped up. And a couple of our staff members do come in and help me produce the paper every week, and then help me get it out and deliver it to the places that we need to get the paper. So it's been a professional challenge, but so far I'm proud of the team.
And we're proud of you too for your commitment to Dorchester and Boston in general. So thank you so much, Bill.
Thanks, Queenie.
Jamil, who is a junior at Crystal Ray, also is here with us, has a question for you this evening.
Hello, Bill.
Hey, Jamil, how are you?
I'm good. My question is, what part of the report stands out to you or would be like you would consider as your favorite?
You know, I often, one of the things I really like to see is the commentary page. I like to get voices in from other people that we publish. So it's called the opinion editorial section, op-ed. I have a column on that page, but more importantly, every week there's new voices on there. And a lot of times the best stuff that we get are like letters to the editor. It's almost like Facebook comments or, IG comments where people are chiming in with their reaction to stories we do. or just introducing new ideas. So one of the things I wanted to say to you as well, the whole team here, if you have something to say, if you have something you'd like to write about, I know that there's other ways to communicate that, but the reporter would love to hear from you, would love to get your accounts of what you're going through, what your family's seeing, you know, what's new in your life. And so that's kind of my favorite section of the paper, even before this, because we exist to be a platform for community voices. And, you know, that's one place that I enjoy reading myself.
Thank you.
Mary, who is a sophomore at Fawn Pond Academy, has a question for you this evening.
Hi, Bill.
Hey, Mary.
My question is, who is the most interesting person you've interviewed?
That's a tough question. I'm have to go back a lot of years. Hey, I mentioned Bruce Seals earlier. He was a very interesting guy to talk to. You don't often get to interview somebody who's got an NBA championship ring, right? So that was pretty cool. You know, the people I've interviewed who've been, I think, most impactful to me, and I don't know if I'd say interesting, but they've always left a impression on me, are people who've gone through some awful time in their life and are yet still so dignified and impressive in the way they carry themselves. And I can think of a couple of people in Dorchester like that. Tina Sherry is one of them, who runs the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute. She lost her son to violence when he was 15, a number of years back. And they run the Mother's Walk for Peace every year. She's always been somebody I found very impressive and interesting. And, you know, I've had a chance to interview people, national figures, and Vice President Biden, for instance. And, you know, we talk to Mayor Walsh all the time. I know you guys had a chance to talk to him. So all these people are interesting. But to me, as a community journalist, talking to people from the neighborhood who are like us is always interesting. I interviewed Mark Wahlberg one time. That was definitely an interesting interview. But for me as a Dorchester kid, I like telling the stories of the people who are from our neighborhood. So those are always interesting. I will say Bill and Denise Richard are two other people who I've always enjoyed talking to, and I so admire the work they do through the Martin Richard Foundation. I know you guys all know of their work, and they're important partners with the club. Those are two other people who I've interviewed who I admire very much.
Elvis has a question for you also, and he's a freshman at South Boston High School.
Cool.
Hey, Bill. My question is, what are some ways we can help each other as a community through COVID-19?
Well, first of all, you're doing it right now by participating, keeping those lines of communication open. Well, the first thing everybody has to do, obviously, is adhere to what the mayor is telling us to do. We have to listen to his leadership right now, more so than any other political leader anywhere. We live here, and the direction that he's giving us, we need to listen to, and we need to encourage our other family members, our siblings, our parents. Sometimes parents need direction too, and reminders of what's safe and what we should be doing. So, you know, start from within your own home. You know, making sure that people are being safe, are being wise in their actions, and not putting other folks at risk, including you or your other people in your house. So, listening to the mayor, I think, since you're home, and if you have the opportunity after school hours to plug into what he's saying every day, the mayor's doing a press conference just about every day, and everybody can watch it. It's on the city website. And he's also passing along inspirational things that, telling good news here and there when he can share it. So you can do that. And I would say just, stay compassionate, understand that everyone's going through this together, and we have to lean on each other right now. And doing things like this is a great way to keep that going.
Brendan is a senior at Boston Latin, and he has a question for you, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Hey, Brendan.
What was your favorite aspect of growing up in Dorchester?
Man, I had several. I could go on for like a long time on that question, but I'll try to keep it short. Number one, this place, right? I mean, my favorite place in Dorchester, period, as an institution is the Boys and Girls Club, because I knew it as a teenager. I worked there. I came to love the place. I love the people. Bob, Mary, Queenie, Bruce, Mike, all these folks who've been there since back then. And that's what makes it so special, is the continuity of leadership and of caring that's gone through generations of people now. So that's number one. I love Dorchester Day, and I'm really not too thrilled that it's not happening this year as a parade. The parade's not going to happen. We're still going to observe it as a party. You know, it may be a virtual one, it may be just in my house, but I love Dorchester Day because our neighborhood's, I think, special in Boston in that we are so diverse. And when we come out as a community that day, you can see it. And not every place is like us. You know, there's some places that don't have what we have. And I really appreciate seeing it in action that day. And it's a lot of fun. It's usually like the start of summer in a way too. So it's like a big street party, barbecue, and just ever since I was a kid, that was an important day for me. So those are my top two right there.
Kaylee, a senior at Boston Latin, also has a question for you, Bill.
Hi, Bill. What is the most compelling story or issue that you've written about?
Well, I think, you know, there's a few different things I've written that will stick with me. The bombing that happened at the marathon and the impact it had on our community through the Richard family and others who were injured that day, and the kind of the trauma that happened from the event. And then what happened as a result of it with the creation of the Richard Foundation and the amazing work that they do, to me is the most compelling thing that I've covered in my career, because of just how emotionally connected I was to the event and to the people, and to just how proud I am of what the community did to in the immediate aftermath to help, whether they were parts of law enforcement or just the community rallying. You know, now we're in a whole other event, right? That's traumatic for a lot of people. I think we will come to look at this sequence of weeks and perhaps months of this COVID crisis as being probably the biggest story that we've covered as a news organization, that we've lived through as a people. You know, the marathon was a short duration event. It was a very traumatic one, but it was a short duration. The other event that I lived through and covered from the Dorchester angle was 9/11, and that was memorable for all the reasons that none of you guys will remember because you're too young. But it was a moment of national and international crisis. But from a local angle, there were local stories from Dorchester that day we were covering, and those weeks afterwards we were covering. But even that, in comparison to what's happening now, because of the scope of this and the duration, is really unprecedented. And then the last thing I would say in terms of a compelling news event or just story that we've written about has been, you know, the crisis that Dorchester people have kind of had to endure for many years now, which is crime in our community and the loss of people that are part of our community to mainly gun violence over the years. So many of the most compelling things that I personally have written about have had to do with one by one certain tragedies that have, you know, unfortunately hit close to home. So those are the things that I would think about in my career.
Logan is a senior at Quincy High, and Logan has a question for you also, Bill.
Hello, Bill.
Hey, Logan.
So my question is, once you decided to go into journalism, what were the first steps you took in pursuing that career?
Yeah, well, I was so lucky because my parents started the Reporter, and I was a kid when they did it, and I would deliver the paper for them, and I would do little things around the house. But I also got interested in writing and reporting because I would go with my parents to events in the neighborhood. So I started young, and I was kind of taken with it in high school. I was writing, and I edited my high school newspaper at BC High. I got involved in writing for the Reporter when I was in college. I did an internship at Channel 5, WCVB in Boston, and I did another one with NBC News. So I got a taste of national and bigger news outlets when I was in college. But what I continued to come back to was I really liked the local news and community news because I could see the immediate impact on our community. And I liked writing stories about my neighborhood. And especially back then when I started my career, I didn't feel that Dorchester and our people were well represented in larger media. That's gotten a lot better over the years. And with social media, it's gotten even better, right? Because we can tell our stories ourselves. But what I would tell people who are interested in journalism is start now, especially if you're not sure. This goes with any career choice. Now is the time to test those waters. Internships, even if they're virtual right now, but those are useful ways. If you think you're interested in journalism in any aspect of it, whether it be radio or social or, television, whatever, you always have to have a writing component to that. And so if you're interested and you like to write and you think you might want to be a reporter or a journalist, first of all, be a consumer of news. Places that do good journalism. From the community angle, I like to think of us in that bracket, but of course, places like the Globe, I'm sometimes fascinated by people who come to me as potential journalists who don't really read a lot. And that's a deficiency. It's a place where you can improve now and start your training by reading and consuming news, especially, reading. That's the critical component. So I think that's how I kind of got my start. I was a consumer of news. I enjoyed it. And I also had some real advantages. But anybody who's from Dorchester who wants to try journalism, they can start here at the Reporter. And we've had many, many people do that over the years. Some of whom have gone on to careers in the business.
Sakina has a question for you, and she is an 8th grader at Latin Academy.
So my question for you is, how did you know that journalism was the career you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, so I think it happened once I actually got here to the Reporter and realized that the stories I did were important to people who I cared about, which were people I would see every day. I would write about the club and Bob would call me, right? Or Mary would call me, or maybe Queenie sometimes would. People would give me feedback at the supermarket and at the restaurant when I go out to eat with my dad, with my parents, or with my girlfriend, then my wife. That's kind of a cool thing when people see your work and give you immediate feedback. And so that's when I realized, I think, that the work I was doing had some importance to people, and I could also see change happen in policy and in outcomes for the neighborhood. So that's a rewarding experience, and that's when I knew, once I did it for a little while, that I'd probably want to stick with it. I had thought about going into government and doing, I did a couple of internships at the State House and thought maybe my form of public service would be through government. And I definitely find that to be a calling, that, like, my wife was in public service that way. She was in government. And but for me, it was through journalism. And so I would say I was about 2 years out of Boston College when I realized that was the course I wanted to stay on.
Bill, and you know that we can stay on and talk all day, but we just want to thank you for being so generous with your time and always being such a good friend to the Boys and Girls Clubs of Dorchester. And we always close our talks by asking, what's the first thing you want to do when we get back to the new normal?
Well, one of the things I'll do for sure is it'll probably be the summer, and I'll probably be dropping my kids off to Deer Street. I think everybody's going to want to have a break from their home and go to familiar places and see familiar faces that you've missed. And definitely for our family, the Boys and Girls Club and Deer Street and the McLaughlin Center are places where my kids have grown up. From the time they were in preschool right through to my oldest son, John, is 16, and worked as a counselor at the Mara building last summer. The kids go to Camp Northbound. My son Connor is already asking me, is Northbound going to happen or what? So all of those things will be, I hope, a part of their summer. And we're all rooting for that. We'll have to wait and see and listen again to the mayor. But that's one of the first things. The other thing I'm really excited to do is we have a place up in New Hampshire, and I'd love to get up there once this is all over and go to the swimming pool.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Bill. And all of us at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Dorchester want to tell you to please stay safe while you're out there sharing this great news in Dorchester. And we definitely look forward to seeing you soon.
Same
Stay
here.
well.
Can't wait to see you all. It's great to see you, and thank you for having me. You all stay safe.
Always.
Thank you,
Thank
Bill.
you
It
so
was
much,
great.
Bill.